In this walkthrough video, I'm going to highlight step by step how Weagree accelerates your contracting flow, making your life easier. From contract automation, the creation stage, and where I will also show you how the clause library is fully integrated with the contract creation process, but also supports your contract know-how management. Let's create the NDA and see how contract automation within Weagree works. This is the heart of contract creation. What you see on the left-hand side is an outline of a confidentiality agreement, starting with the parties block, interpretation clauses with definitions and other clauses, at the end signature block and a dispute resolution complete version. That's a funny indication, complete. Why is that? Well, actually, we use in the confidentiality agreements template, we use building blocks taken from the clause library. In the clause library, you probably also have variations on dispute resolution clauses, like a dispute resolution clause simple or some other version. Using them from the clause library makes your life for contract know-how management purposes extremely simple. Because if you want to update the templates for changes in the laws or regulations, or for a change of your corporate policy in the way you want to handle applicable law or dispute resolution, then you would only make the change in the clause library clause, and from there it will automatically apply in the templates where those building blocks from the clause library are being used. What you also see over here is an indication which clauses in the outline of the confidentiality agreement still require an answer, and of course also those clauses that are fully automatically inserted without any Q&A questions to be asked. On the right hand side are Q&A questions. Within Weagree, typically it starts with what we call global questions. Those are the questions that affect the entire template. They may relate to the background for general purchasing agreements, what type of products or services are being sourced under a strategic sourcing agreement. In a share purchase agreement, it may relate to payment mechanisms or closing mechanisms, or whether certain conditions apply that affect the wording all across the contract that you're creating. In an NDA, it's not that complicated, but NDAs tend to be there in the format of a mutual or a one-sided NDA where we are to disclose. And occasionally you need to draft an NDA where the other party is typically the disclosing party. Clicking on the magnifier allows you to see in the underwater screen what the effect is of answering this question in one way or another. You can expand the underwater screen so that you can see it a little bit better. This gives you a very strong sense of being in control over the language of your contract without the need to put all the nuance in the Q&A questions. It makes you feel comfortable not being in a pipeline for a long Q&A time, but have full control of what language is being inserted. Weagree can be linked with an external CRM so that you can pick up the party details from outside. In our case, we are going to enter into an agreement with the party that we are already working with, for example, Gavia Services Paris SA, and it inserts all the details relating to that party. We're going to go for product development being the main purpose. In such a case, we might have an invention, for example, that we have been patenting, and where we need to, in order to discuss all this for which we have a patent, we would need to make disclosures relating to that. Normally, that would mean that we enter into a patent license, but for the scope of these simple discussions, that's probably an overkill. At the same time, when you set up your template for a confidentiality agreement, you don't anticipate the rare occasion that you want to provide for a patent license in a confidentiality agreement. That's quite rare. Similar use cases can be found elsewhere. For example, you could have a joint development agreement where you want to insert certain clauses with organizing the joint development project more than you anticipated in the template. Where you could have a share purchase agreement, for example, so for the purchasing of shares, and you would not anticipate the purchase of certain separate assets under the share purchase agreement, for example, real property or real estate, or the acquisition of the intellectual property rights alongside the shares, but you want to integrate those in your share purchase agreement. And yet, in your share purchase agreement template, you don't anticipate all those type of assets because it's a share purchase agreement. Now, likewise, it may be helpful from time to time, typically the situations where legal counsel are asked to be involved, that you want to plug in certain clauses from the clause library. And that is needed over here. On the top left side, you can see access to the clause library where you can find that final puzzle piece and plug it into the outline. You can see here also, for example, the dispute resolution clause complete, and indeed there is a version simple here as well. But we are searching for a patent clause, so that is something that relates in the category intellectual property rights category of clause. The clause library opens in the language of the underlying template. So you won't see the French language clauses or the Dutch language clauses as they may also be in the clause library, because a Dutch language clause in an English language template doesn't make much sense. I'm going to search the clause library. You can see also that there are other ways of filtering and sorting your clause library so as to optimize usage. And in our case, here I see a clause IP license out. And that's what I would need in connection with a patent license. Indeed, an explanatory note tells me that it is suitable for all kind of IP rights. I'm plugging in this clause and I want to insert it into the confidentiality agreement under the generic NDA clause on intellectual property rights. So I'll insert it over here, and when or as we are going through the questionnaire now, we will also process the Q&A questions that pop up in this clause. After answering all the Q&A questions, you will know only then which definitions are to be inserted. So at the end of the questionnaire, Q&A questions popping up in the definitions will then be triggered. And you can see already that there's a license definition included. I can tell you that definition, it's listed in alphabetical order over here, triggered and inserted by virtue of this license out clause. Of course, later on we will see that additional definitions will appear as we go through the questionnaire. Now, let's start. It's not a confidentiality as such agreement anymore, but confidentiality and license agreement. And you can see in the underwater screen what the effect of my answering the questionnaire is. It gives you full control over the whole process, and that's a very convenient feeling if you are in a pipeline for a questionnaire type of things. Questions, as you might have noticed, can be really straightforward. Do you want to name the employees with access to information in an annex? If the question is still unclear, there are information icons that explain it probably for the more junior people. If I tick yes, it will insert a phrase into a clause 3.2 referring to an annex. And then we will see that fully automatically, as a consequence of me checking the box over here, it has added an annex to the contract, and it will in the end, of course, process the Q&A questions that pop up in that schedule. We will then see that when we are going to list the patents in an annex, that this numbering may change, and we will see eventually how it works in the Word document as it will come up. Q&A questions appear only as and when necessary. So if I check a box, it will start asking follow-up questions and whatever is needed or related to that. Here's the Q&A question that relates to my patent clause. There's still no choice made as regard to geographical scope. So in the absence of a Q&A answer, it will insert certain language within square brackets. As I check territory, it will insert a definition. We were talking about certain patents to apply over here, so the license would be under licensed patent. And now you grasp what is happening in the list of definitions. And in alphabetical order, you see appearing licensed patents as well as territory. There's really no care to be taken ultimately in the Word document whether definitions are there or not. Definitions appear only as and when they are used, depending on how you had answered the questionnaire. You won't have unused definitions in the list, and you should also not have definitions failing to be listed, as you may use them in the template. And then again, Q&A questions can be very short swing. And that's very helpful for non-lawyers. Lawyers would like to seek the nuance in all respects regarding the effect of answering the questionnaire, but a salesperson would simply want to answer the question and they don't consider whether have you already started making disclosures in the past. That requires a warranty relating to the past to be included. And as the question is short, it gives me a strong sense of being in control over the creation of my Word document, that I can see it in the underwater screen. And there's another thing that I would like to show you over here. Actually, two things. First of all, the underwater screen gives you a very powerful sense of being in control over your contract. But it goes beyond this. You can detach the underwater screen and have it scroll along on a monitor. And it looks quite awkward on a single monitor, but you would then have your Word document scroll along with you answering the questions. And you can see on one screen the contract that scrolls along with answering the questionnaire, and on your laptop you can answer the questions. What also is possible over here is that you click in the text and you modify it just like that. I can tweak the language, and I'm going to do this now by way of an instruction or by way of opening a discussion about the percentage needed in the definition of affiliates. You will get the picture that ultimately the Word document will be looking the way it is right now with all my changes. A very nice feature over here is another one that you might have noticed already. Alongside every clause in this contract that we are currently creating are little balloons. And the balloons enable me to discuss certain clauses with colleagues. With, for example, the legal department. I would send Gerry Kneteman an email. If I send it over here, Gerry Kneteman will receive an email with a link. He can click on the link, comes straight into the questionnaire, and would see in the communications tab here in the margin, clicking also on the underwater screen, where it is in the clause, and he can reply to my question to him and answer whether that's a relevant or irrelevant thing to consider in the framework of a confidentiality agreement. You can send a message to the template administrator instead of putting a post-it on your desk or on your monitor, just to make sure that you don't forget the changes you want to make in your contract know-how. You would do that by sending the message to the template administrator, indicated that you saw a typo or that there's a change in laws or regulations or whatever you may want to forward to the template administrator. So the collaborative aspect in creating a contract within Weagree is very strong, and it also is very actionable because you don't need to set up a meeting or so or discuss it in anything. You can simply invite the person over here and you can go on. One thing that you don't want people in the business to do is make a selection of the applicable law. And it's not necessary. You can filter out Q&A questions based on authorization level, based on user profiles or roles predefined within Weagree. I am processing this as a head of legal, but if I were contract manager, I would not have received questions about dispute resolution. If I'm a more junior lawyer, I might make such a choice on the applicable law, but I might not necessarily be given the option to select whether a court or arbitration are the right means of settling disputes. This filtering away is also something that you can apply to guest users that you invite within the Weagree wizard. You just click on the button, fill in the details of your supplier, customer, a partner, and you leave them a personal note. They will receive an email just like the comment or question to Gerry Kneteman a minute ago, and they will receive a link where they are invited to create a password, super secure, and they would enter into Weagree only into this questionnaire to fill in those details that relate to them. Of course, you can build up the questionnaire more elaborately for guest user purposes. We are now only in the rather narrow framework of an NDA, but for large framework agreements or statements of works or the like, it may be very helpful if you have your partners, suppliers or customers to join you in the questionnaire. Guest users can be granted less rights. Also, they would not see each and every option for limitation of liability clauses. They're out of their sight. They will get the default answer. We have the license patents over here. I might define the patent over here with its patent number, but I may as well attach the list with patents in an annex. And if I do so, yes, you will appreciate that at the end of the document, it will automatically insert a schedule or annex, and the annex is referenced correctly. And then we are at the end of the questionnaire. I can click through the outline here on the left to reconsider Q&A questions, but I may as well generate the Word document. And then Weagree delivers your Word document on the draft or negotiate page. Before I'm going to explain to you how from here Weagree can save you a lot of time, hassle, and how Weagree helps you organize your contracts and contract-related files, let's first take a look at the contract that we've just generated. The most important files are always one click away, and in our case, the confidentiality agreement. In Weagree, you can configure basically everything in your contract house style, and you don't need to take care of applying the house style to all your contracts because Weagree treats house styles and look and feel of your contracts, letters and other documentation in a modular way, which basically means that you typically define 2 or 3 house styles in Weagree and that you apply them to all the agreements, which also means that if you change the house style, you would do that on one place only, and for the rest, all of your templates are updated at once. You can define virtually everything. Let's walk through the document that we've generated and I'll explain you how and where that is. First of all, it's the layout of the cover pages. You can configure this entirely to your liking, indicate where draft indications or for discussion purposes notices need to appear. You can define what needs to be in the header and in the footer of a cover page, the table of contents page and further pages, etc. And let's then walk through the contract step by step. Note that the table of contents already indicates the license clause as we had just inserted it. Then in the subsequent pages, also here fully automatically the title of the contract is adjusted according to the Q&A, of course. Party details have been inserted as they were defined in the CRM or in the party database of Weagree. You may note that I made this tweak in the affiliate definition as it were there all the time, but I inserted it, of course, during the questionnaire. Then the remaining definitions are all in alphabetical order. Note the ones about territory, license patents, and license. And Annex 1 is what has become the license patents list. Obviously, then the reference to employees with access to confidential information is renumbered. Annex 2, and this is something which is worthwhile noting, that cross-references within Weagree cannot go wrong. They will always appear correctly, and that is what you can see already here with the references to the Annexes 1 and 2. Then also in the header and the footer of the agreement, they are to the liking formatted according to your house style, of course. And then let's move on to the next pages where you will see that we, through the clause library, inserted a license clause referring to the license patent, which basically pushed back clauses disclaimer and temporal scope to become articles 7 and 8. And then another interesting thing appears because in 8.2 there's a cross-reference made to clause 8.1. Well, 8.1 that didn't used to be 8.1 until we inserted the license clause, but the 8.1 which is here is correctly renumbered. Further, you can see that the party details for the notices clauses have been inserted also fully automatically, taken from the CRM system. signature block are ready to go. What you don't see actually, but it is here in white spacing inserted, are the presets for e-signing. No need to take care of that. When we later on are going to proceed the e-signing, then placeholders are already put in place. Annex 1 contained the license patents. You might note that during the questionnaire I selected the license patents by their short name, but Weagree also fully automatically added the more technical details. It didn't trigger that during the questionnaire. And then finally there's the Annex 2. That's the Word document that we want to work with, of course. Weagree also supports and helps managing contracts that were created outside Weagree. And of course, if you receive the version 2, 3 or 4, or if your colleagues send you schedules or contract related files, you can forward email those to Weagree. As you could already see in the top right corner, there's an inbox. If you send an email with an attachment to your Weagree portal, Weagree will automatically forward and send that email in your inbox from where you can handle it. Later on we will see how it works. For now, all I do is that I forward an example of those email. So here you have an email and I forward it to the Weagree portal. Later on we will pick up that email and handle it. Now, thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. We are very happy to answer any of them. Thanks a lot.